budget is $18 billion in the state prison system. The police, at least in LA, is the largest single budget. I think every city, the largest budget is the police, and yet crime keeps going up. People say that's why we need more police. I'm saying, well, no, they've already failed. We don't need more police. The prisons isn't helping nobody. We got more people in prisons than any other state for sure, or at least for Texas, but it still hasn't changed anything. That's because crime and public safety has nothing to do with police or prison. You know what I'm saying? It has to do with people surviving. It has to do with what you do in the front end, what some resources people have, how kids are taken care of, how families are make sure their needs are met, how their health, mental and physical health is adequate and full to them. You know what I'm saying? It's more about what we do in our communities. As long as you have poverty, as long as you have all this homelessness, as long as you have people who are desperate, you're going to have crime and public unsafety. That's what's going to happen. You have to take care of people. You can't just do all that, deprive them of their jobs, push them out of their homes, do it, and then come in at the back end and say, now we're going to put them in prison. And I worked in prison for 40 years. I didn't work for the prisons. I came in there as a creative writer, came in there as a poet, healing circles, talks. For 40 years I've been going to these prisons, talking to a lot of people, and I have found that for the most part, prisons only make these young men and women, who start very young, worse. Some make it okay, some survive, some do well in spite of everything. But when you don't give them proper rehabilitation, proper education, proper help, they get worse. What kind of business does somebody get into where people get worse at the end of it than when they get in front of it? Where they fail. There was a time when we had 75% recidivism. You know what that means? When they get out of prison, they go back into prison. That's a failure rate. And yet we still put money in it. We still put money into these things that don't work. And yet they scare us because the first time the crime rises, public safety is at stake, let's get more cops, we get more prisons. That's what they constantly do, and we get scared. We think, yeah, I don't want to be robbed. I don't want my friends hurt. Bring them in. They don't resolve it. I hope you understand what I'm saying. They don't resolve the problem. We have to go to the root, not just manage the crisis, but get to the root.
So this is, I think, maybe the third event we've done together as proposed was. I've heard you answer this question. I heard you talk about. In answer to this question, something that's a little unconventional to most people, but the idea that cultural centers are really the answer, and local cultural centers. Can you speak to how you would have a statewide plan for more cultural centers in various neighborhoods throughout the state?
Yeah, it might seem counterintuitive when you say my answer is more culture centers, but I'm going to tell you why important and transformative culture in our communities is. Right now, I'm in the northeast San Fernando Valley, and if you don't know what it's like, it used to be called the Mexican side of the valley. They can't say that, saying quotes, because Mexicans are everywhere, for one. And plus, now it's mostly Mexican and Central American, so it's combined with all our gente from all over Mexico, Central America. It has 500,000 people. That's a big, big area. Second largest Mexican Central American community after East LA, which is, I think, about 1 million people in the greater East LA area. But here's the deal. There is no bookstores. There was no bookstores. There was no art galleries. There was no cultural cafes. There was no theaters. You couldn't even see a movie. You know, this is the movie capital of the world here, the LA Basin area. You can't even see a movie in these neighborhoods. You can buy any drug. I don't care what the drug laws are. In those neighborhoods, you can buy any gun, and you can't buy a book. So me and my wife, 20 years ago, created this beautiful space called Tia Chucha Centro Cultural and Bookstore. It's been there, growing, developing. We've been pushed out of strip malls. We keep finding new places. We keep being undermined. We keep working at it. Some of the early politicos went against us, but we fought them. They're gone. We're still there. And now we've gotten bigger. Now we're in a space 3 times bigger than our last space. We've actually broke the $1 million mark in our budget, all because of the hard work. It's hard to do, but that's important. We got and now people have not just movies, they have theater, they have music, they have guitar player. The kids are learning that stuff. They're learning to play. We have art painting, and we have bookstore. People can buy books there. The kids, little kids come in there, the first thing they see is these beautiful bilingual children's illustrated books. Because we find where they're at and we bring them in there. They love it. Their parents say that the kids never showed any interest until they see the book to hold them. So it's successful, and I find it to be transformative. I find that whenever you have arts, full arts, in every neighborhood, people don't get in trouble as much. You see what I'm saying? That's why I like this whole arts district. I like the idea that arts are in communities. But what I don't like is when they concentrate it. You know, like they do in LA, they concentrate in Hollywood and the Museum Row, downtown, and maybe the beaches. Bring it into every neighborhood. Every neighborhood should be alive with festivals and music and public art and murals. And that's what we want, and that's what I think would help our kids, and that would get us to have more safety than if we just do the back end of it.
Thank you for the answer. So if you're driving in from here, from wherever now, if you were driving to East LA area, over all the overpasses, you're going to see a sign that says reads "No ice, no ice, no ice." So there's a growing movement, a growing demand in the state of California to abolish ice, to get rid of it. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, one thing people don't know is for many years, actually for around 20 years, maybe longer, I became an expert to try to keep people from getting deported in immigration court. The reason why is because they were deporting all these gang kids from LA to Mexico and Central America. That's why there's all these models in Central America. In Mexico, they're sending all these violent kids all over, going over there. And they were being attacked, and they were being undermined. And I tried to help kids from being sent down there to their death. I'm telling you, this is the way it was. When the Maras went down there, they had a whole different reality than the one here. And there was a lot of opportunity to kill and steal. This is the truth. Not all of them are bad. I get some of them trying to get over it, but you got all these tatuados or heavily tattooed guys from LA. They're all from LA. They talk all Chicano. They talk like us. They come from the streets. But now they're down there and and I'm not saying all of them, but enough of them are running rampant and killing people and really hurting people. So I began to be what they call gang expert witness. But here's what I found is that, first of all, the judges didn't care about it. There's 5 ways you can get asylum, and they couldn't figure out how gang violence was going to be one of the ways. So they would deport the kids that I was trying to stop from being deported, and within a week or 2, they'd be killed. And nobody cared. I was telling them, you're going to send them to their deaths. And this is just not Central America. This was Mexico when the drug cartels got really bad. They got so bad that people were being sent to their deaths. Said, don't send me to Chihuahua, man. That's where my family's from. But at the time, Chihuahua had the highest murder rate of any place in Mexico. And sure enough, they were being sent. And if they didn't join the cartel or they messed around too much, they got killed. It got really bad. And I got really sad at what was happening, that we weren't taking into account the realities of Central America and Mexico. There's poverty, and then there's government corruption, which you all know about. All those countries corrupt as all get out. And 3, there's extreme violence. Some of that violence is as bad as civil wars in the world. As you know, more journalists were killed in Mexico alone than any other country except Iraq, I think. There was more violence per capita in Mexico and Central America than Afghanistan. Honestly, this is how it was, and we couldn't get people help. So they were coming over trying to get asylum, and all they would do is detain them, put them in prison, some up to 5 years. They don't even have to be, like I said, they didn't have to have criminal backgrounds or anything. They just held them, and then they'd get deported. After 5 years sitting there waiting for their cases, and then we find they got deported anyway. It's rough, I get it. There's a lot of people sitting on our border, and part of the problem is that we allowed a lot of those corrupt governments, like in Honduras and Guatemala and even in El Salvador, we allowed it to happen because they were our governments. You know what I'm saying? We said it's okay, and yet these people were ripping off these governments like crazy. And why do I do that? Because I've been going to those countries. For 30 years, I've been going to El Salvador. I went to 10 prisons. And in Guatemala, I was there in 2 prisons. And in Honduras, I spent a month working with abandoned kids. And I'm all over Mexico. And that's why I know this stuff. I've been there, and I've been trying to stop the deportations, and trying to stop the detention, and trying to get this country to have a proper, adequate, and really rapid moving asylum way to bring people in here. You know what I'm trying to say. And that's not what's going on. Everything's a total mess. And it's not just Trump. unfortunately. It's also Biden. There's a big mess right now, the whole thing. I get Trump made it worse, but the idea is that even with Biden, things aren't going very well.
So, last question on this kind of this general topic. Recently, within the last, I think it was a few years ago, it was revealed that the California Gang Database had confessed gang members as young as 6 months old, right? Which is obviously not correct, but was actually in their system. They had supposedly these toddlers confessing to being members of gangs, right? And the names were on this list. And if you found yourself on this list, you ended up in a gang injunction. And there were gang injunctions in Orange County, for instance. And I'm sure this is what I know. I'm sure there's much absurd ones all over. Where it wouldn't even allow people who, if they were on their names on this list, to even gather in front of certain murals, because that would mean that there was like gang activity. So what would you as governor do to reform, or to just get rid of, or whatever, these injunctions, these databases, and this ridiculous harassment of really, let's be honest, of Black and Latino communities here in the state of California? What would you do about this?
Well, maybe some statistics. You all know gang injunctions. You know what they are, right? You know that only people ever caught up in it are Black and brown. There is no gang injunction against white gangs, by the way, who can be quite murderous themselves, or even the Asian gangs. There's only Black and brown neighborhoods that are being highlighted. The other thing you may not know is this started in the San Gabriel Valley. The first gang injunction was in West Covina, when at the time white people didn't like these Mexicans being pushed out of the other parts of San Gabriel Valley, because they were being gentrified, including my neighborhood, South San Diego, including from Lomas and Sangra to Monte Flores to other neighborhoods, La Puente, wherever it was, they were pushing them out. People were getting gentrified and pushing them out this way. So the time the white people of West Covina came up with the first gang injunction, and my body was on the list of the gang injunction. That was so successful that now every city and all over the county, they started having gang injunctions. They were all over. And then the whole state started doing gang injunctions. There are gang injunctions everywhere now. But what it does, it arrests whole communities. It doesn't just arrest an individual. Whole communities were under the gun. They could stop anybody, 3 people in the corner, they could stop you, they can search you, they can get photos of you. If you got tattoos, you want to know how many times I've been stopped? You must be a gang member, or if you're talking to gang kids trying to help them. I used to do a lot of gang intervention. I was in the streets helping kids, I was in the corners. If I'm sitting there with them, I'd get caught up in the net. You see what I'm saying? This is what they would do, and they would also do something even sillier, as he's pointing out. They would get kids who had no gang affiliation and declare them gang members, and put them on that database that they couldn't get out of for many, many years. Only recently were they allowed to get out. So I was one of the people that spoke against the gang injunctions. I spoke out against the county DA. He would show up to events and I would come and challenge him. And we had really hard discussions, but I could prove to you that the database and gang injunctions were a waste of time. They didn't stop gang violence. They didn't help nobody. All they did was make more gang members when there wasn't that many. Turned out that guy, and I'll tell you his name. His name is Bruce Reardon. He got out of that county department. He saw me in a public event, and he came up to me. Bruce Reardon, I was arguing with him all the time. He says, you know what, I have to tell you were right. I just couldn't tell you were right. Everything you said was true, but I don't no longer work for the DA, and I'm letting you know you were right. Well, we have actually stopped a lot of gang injunctions, as you know. They've been going away. There's still some popping up. There's other incarnations of it, but this is a successful thing. We actually have stopped so many gang injunctions. LA City, for example, has lost, I think, most of their gang injunctions, if I'm not mistaken. In other words, this is a victory that nobody talks about, the media doesn't talk about. We stopped a lot of gang injunctions because we don't want our communities arrested. You know what I'm saying? Any excuse to just put people behind bars. Pretty soon they make more laws, we make more lawless. More and more laws, more people become lawless. Now they got all kinds of reasons to put people behind bars. So we had to put a stop to it. So that's why I think this is important, because they're still there and they're insidious and they pop up, especially when people want, public safety and stop crime. The tough on crime thing is coming back, as you know. But I always tell people, it's tougher to care. Don't talk about tough on crime. You sit in front of your TV and you see the news. Let's go get these gangsters. It's tougher to walk these streets work with these young people, give them something to do, give them resources, give them arts, give them education. It's tougher to be there and care for them, to be there every time they get in trouble, to hold their hand and help them get going. So that's what
On that note, okay, so let's shift to the environment. Los Angeles, Bakersfield, Visalia, Fresno. These are the 4 cities in the United States of America with the worst air quality. California is home to the 4 cities with the worst air quality in the entire country. What is, Governor, would you do to address the fact that the air is killing us?
Well, all of this, by the way, is preventable. That's what really gets me mad. We could have stopped wildfires a long time ago. But we don't do the preventive things that you do to keep wildfires from happening. You know what I'm saying? You know the indigenous people of this land? Me and my son, we were up to Pomo land, and the Yurok people. And one of these guys got up and he says, we're not against burning. We're not against logging. There's a time and place to do that. A problem with the Forestry Service is they don't do it, and they don't know how to do it. And then guess what? Nature itself, for whatever reason, either lightning or the Pacific Gas Company, you know, their utility things fall down, or everything burns. And then you're losing miles and miles of acreages and acreages of land. It doesn't have to be that way. It's all preventable. The same thing with the climate. We don't need to use fossil fuel anymore. Hope you understand that. I know we're still stuck in it. It doesn't need to be done. We're building such solar and wind ways. Wind has already beaten every other energy source except for natural gas in the country. It's the most safest, most employable, and the biggest ones to end, to help the climate. And yet it's not given enough support. There's not enough support in our state to make sure that we have all the natural ways to get clean air and clean energy. So it's clean, renewable energy. I am for a Green New Deal. I would implement that here in the state of California. I will make sure that fossil fuels are not used anymore. Almost all the drilling, and he's talking about these neighborhoods, but almost all of them are in poor people's homes, near poor people's homes, black and brown people's. You know what I'm saying? That's where most of these are. And so they're poisoning our communities even more. They're right there next to the poorest neighborhoods, up and down the state. Central Valley and everything is these drilling places. And we get more impacted. You all remember that lead foundry that was in East LA, San Vernon? You guys remember the story? That lead foundry poisoned about 150,000 homes in Boyle Heights and Southeast LA and all these communities. They've been there since 1900s. Been there for almost 100 years. They couldn't close it down for nothing. I worked there myself. I was a smelter in that foundry. And the reason why I had to quit is because what they would do is they would test you every week. But once you got tested for a certain amount of lead, they would fire you. And then you didn't know what had happened. And so I got pushed out of there because of the lead. I have lead in my bones that I'm worried about because that lead doesn't go away. That's what causes leukemia and other cancers. I'm worried. I might get it. I'm not going to worry about it, but the point is, I could have it. That's the same lead foundry I used to work in. We finally closed it down. Remember? Finally closed it down after 100 years, after so many people got poisoned in all that area. So I'm for making sure we have a Green New Deal, and we emphasize the environment as a multi-pronged approach, and make sure that we get rid of fossil fuels the way we get there.
You mentioned Southeast LA, and actually, when I was a kid, I grew up in Oswego, but also grew up in Maywood, and I sometimes worry about that too because I remember reading about Exide and how the soil was all poisoned. And I sometimes wonder about some of the conditions I have if we came from that. But there are Southeast LAs all over the state, and there are cancer alleys all over the state, and we know who lives in these cancer alleys primarily, And so when we have these things, I know the West Side is right now, Santa Monica area, they're priding themselves on this plan to have trash delivery systems that don't run on oil and this and that, but they get dump the trash in the Southeast. there's all, even as these people plan, even as state makes plans to green the economy, there's still these cancer alleys, there's still these landfills, still whatever, and it's affecting, the usual suspects. So can you talk about how we need to green the economy and do it in a way that isn't completely racist?
Well, one of the things that's important is like the San Gabriel Valley, you might know, has the highest cancer rates in the LA area. I don't know if you know that. Because when the smog hits these mountains, and then it stays longer in this part of the valley. So we have higher cancer rates. It's already been proven. You would think we would all be pissed off that family members are dying of cancer here. But we are given a kind of a story that makes it seem like, hey, it happens. It happens for a reason, and we gotta know that reason. They know what's going on. They don't care that smog is hitting the mountains and coming back down into this valley. The other thing you should know is in the San Fernando Valley where I live, Pacoima, you may not know this, one of the poorest communities, black and brown community, migrant community, had a number of factors, including a big brass foundry. Right now has 50 toxic sites. Pacoima is only 2.5 square miles, maybe 110,000 people. 50 toxic sites. One of them was this brass foundry that they were trying to clean because it poisoned the earth so bad. They were cleaning it for 20 years. It was sitting there. And then they finally declared it's clean. And people were saying it's not clean. It's a lot of poison. But they said, no, we cleaned it. They built a strip mall over it. See what I'm saying? And people are walking over the strip mall not knowing that they're actually on poisoned soil and there's poisoned aquifers. Seriously. And the regulators are allowing it to happen. So I'm sure that this is the same over here. We need to make sure that if people are in government, they work for us, not for the corporations. They work for us, not for the oil drillers. They work for us and not these people that make a lot of money off our suffering. And then even that, we get the cancers, we can't even get the proper health care. So let's put it in there. Let's put the health care. Let's put the preventive list that's there, but also make sure that people got free, single-payer health care. That we take care of everybody's health care. Even when this pandemics come, that we're prepared for them, because that's the other thing with preventable. Every 100 years we're getting pandemics and we act like this is all new. Let's be prepared and give people the help they need instead of waiting to the last minute. And now, guess what happened in the pandemic? Everything went crazy. I lost a lot of money in work, and a book came out and didn't make it. I had a play, we were going to push it and didn't make it. But you know why I don't care about that? Because people died. Who cares that I lost my... People died. I'm lucky. I'm blessed. Well, I'm still here. My family's still here. I don't care about all those losses. People died, and we forget that all of it was preventable. So I would say that's what's important to remember. Every one of these things don't have to happen. They're part of the system. Diabetes too, by the way. Who's got diabetes too? It is a capitalist system disease. It comes from the fact that everywhere you go, the food is bad for you, even when they say it's good food. They sell it to you everywhere. I was eating really good during the pandemic. Even though my wife and my kids and my sons are living with me, so they're all helping. We are eating really good. As soon as the pandemic clears up, all my numbers, I'm type 2 diabetic, my numbers will go going down. Doctor was very happy. I just recently kept my blood test because I've been going out now. Guess what? It went up. Oh my God, my doctor's going to beat me up. But it's because I went out. You can't find good food out there. And I am like everybody else. I'm addicted to sugars. I'm addicted to all the things that we all are. I'm addicted to all this food. And so I just wanted to say that it's important that we recognize that every one of these things doesn't have to be this way. And that's what we need government to do, to acknowledge that and make sure that we bring the health and care that everybody's going to need. My slogan for my campaign is, imagine a new California for shared well-being. That's what we're doing.
So much like the cancer alleys, the food deserts are also, resulting, the cancer alleys resulting in cancer and food deserts resulting in diabetes. So can you speak a little bit about, what food deserts are, how your campaign would address them?
Well, for one, it's kind of interesting how the private market system allows all kinds of things to happen, and nobody can stop it when it hurts you. You know what I'm saying? I guess you can stop heroin, but they don't stop that. I guess they can say that it's illegal, but they don't stop it. Crystal meth is everywhere. They say it's against the law, it's everywhere. But forget all that. All of our neighborhoods have liquor stores. They got liquor stores and not other places. The liquor stores, I know, but I used to be an alcoholic for many years. I was on heroin for 7 years, and then I drank for 20 years. I've been, by the way, sober for 29 years. So but they used to show you that rot gut. $2, I think it's still $2. $1, they left $2, still very cheaply. They're made by the same wine companies that make the quality wine. They're the throwaway wines that they give and purposely bottle to our neighbors' hoods. They put them in those liquor stores. The Muscatels, the Mad Dogs, the Night Trains, I can name you all of them. I used to think all this nonsense. You know, so what kind of world is it that markets our death? You know? And again, even though they got crime and drug laws, it doesn't stop. I hate to say this because it's my son's daughter, but he's here. My granddaughter just got sentenced to 5 years in prison for being on crystal meth. She don't need prison. She's been 5 or 6 years she's been on crystal meth. It's been hard getting her out. We tried to get her recovery. She got clean a little bit, then she went back. You know, the whole thing. She needs a lot of help. But they got tired and said, we're done with her, and they sent her to prison for 5 years. This is not the answer to what's happening. And again, she can get crystal meth anywhere. He said, why is it so accessible? You know, it's easy to get. So I mention all these things to point out that, you know, the food deserts is related to that. We have bad food everywhere that made with all this sugary stuff so that people get attracted to it, addicted to it. They make with a bunch of stuff, chemicals in there that just, you know, I'm attracted to all these fat food places like everybody else. You know, we went to Dunkin' Donuts. I mean, I have to admit, I'm an old addict, and now it's food and soda pop. Oh, I was thinking soda pop for the longest time. Oh my God, I had to stop soda pop. It was actually killing me more faster than the other stuff. But anyway, I just point out that we have to, health is something that we can all be part of. It doesn't have to cost us money. But if you make it a market thing where people willing to pay for it, you sell it to them, then we're going to lose as a people.
All right. So changing topics, now moving to here's a corny transition. Moving to the feeding of the mind. All right. So right now, as you know, ethnic studies, there's a big ethnic studies struggle here in the country. You were endorsed by the Association of Rasa Educators. As you know, they're very big in fighting for ethnic studies, for the liberated ethnic studies model. After Gavin Newsom vetoed the original ethnic studies, and kind of like gutted it. So, can you speak a little bit to the endorsement of the Association of Rasa Educators and why they endorsed you and what that means to you?
Well, just like I was saying, in politics, we need more voices and more choices. In our history books, we need more voices and more choices. We need to know who we are. Every one of us should feel like they belong in this country. They need to see it in the books. I grew up where I couldn't see my faces in any book. History was not my history. You understand what I'm saying? And then they wanted me to study this to be a good student. I'm not going to study other people's cultures and histories. That has nothing to do with me. And then they make you feel bad. You're no good. They expel you, whatever. I had a hard time in school. I couldn't see myself. I couldn't see my story. I couldn't, even literature. That I used to, I might tell you stories. I was homeless for 3 years when I was a teenager. You know, the troubled young man, you all know, always running would tell you all that story. But my refuge was that downtown library. I loved to read, man. And I would read all the books I could. I read Ray Bradbury, E.B. White, but then I read all these great black books that were coming out, Malcolm X and James Baldwin and Claude Brown and Perry Thomas, and all these great books were coming out. I was eating them up. But I noticed there was never a book with Garcia Sanchez Rodriguez. Never. Luckily, after all these years, and you go to that library now, you will see my books, Rodriguez. You will see Sidney's book. You will see he started to break through, started to open up those doors, but it's not enough. And our kids are still going, even now, going to schools where they're teaching them a fantasized history of this country. It's a made-up history. It's all fantasy land. I get it. I know history. I've studied it. So they make up all this stuff. So we have got to have classes that teaches the truth and our truth and how to say values everybody's particular story. There's a unity and essentialness that we need to stick to, but we also need to say it's important that we all differentiate and understand each other for who we are and what we are and how we got here. You understand what I'm saying? And I will tell you one last thing. We're imprisoned by the nation state. You know what I'm saying? We're imprisoned by these states that were created and borders were created. Most recently, they were created very arbitrarily. Tribes were cut in half because of borders. Mexico and the U.S. has tribes that are across both sides, and they've been cut in half because the border comes down and now we're not different people. Same with Guatemala. Mayans are Mexico and Guatemala, but then there's the Guatemalan Mayans now, separate from the Honduran Mayans and all the other Mayans. In other words, we're all cut up. The nation state becomes more important, and now we're fighting over each other. Which nation is better than the other? You know what I'm trying to get at? That's a shame. And I'm not saying you shouldn't be proud of being Salvadoreño or Hondureño, lo que sea. You should be proud, but not to the point where, oh, I hate everybody. And forget them. Mexicans are some of the worst ones. Let me just be real with my head there. We're some of the worst ones. We get harder on everybody. I go, why? We're all the same people. And not only that, not only we're the same people, indigenous, but let's be real. Every human being is the same people. We all belong on this earth. You think Mother Earth cares what nation, cares whether you're queer or you're not, cares whether you're black or you're not, cares whether you're a drug addict or an ex-prisoner? It doesn't care. Mother Earth embraces every one of us, holds us. You walk on this earth and it doesn't fight it. You know what I'm saying? But yet, now you got a border and somebody says you don't belong here. What is Ukraine and Russian? The same thing. People are dying for made-up things. And this is why the history is important. This is why we need it in our schools, so people can have the proper perspective. We have to understand where we all came from, how we got here, how important everybody's story is, but at the same time, that essentially, we're human beings on this earth, and we're losing our capacity to be more human.
So, follow-up to that, recently there's been book bans, I think in Tennessee, a few other places. It's reminiscent of a book ban that took place in 2010 in the state of Arizona. Your work, I believe you had 3 works that were banned in, I think 3 or 4 of your works were banned during the Tucson, Arizona book ban. In California, there's nothing so strong or so obvious as a book ban. It's a much more subtle form of just maneuvering things out, right? So there's kind of smudging things out in California. It's just of reducing our impact, and we are, when you're talking about our populations, we are a big part of the state, and yet in the new ethnic studies curriculum, I think we compose like about 10% of all the studies. Someone just studying this of the new ones, and that's kind of how we're perceived in this country. It's really underrepresented, and in California, a state where our population is growing, our presence seems to be not reflected in that, in the way in which the country explains itself to itself, or the way the state explains itself to itself, the way the education system is. Can you speak a little bit about that and what you as governor would do? You as culture, you as Luis Rodriguez.
Well, I think what you're trying to point out is the way that they censor us is by not buying our book. They don't have to ban the book, they just don't even bother with them. We're dismissed. Now we got Flower Sound Press, we got books. We got all these great presses. We got books. People used to say, you guys don't have no books. Well, we got the books and they still closed doors. So it wasn't about us, it's about them. And I'm talking about the races, because there are races running these things. One of the things that was really big when my book, Who is Running, came out, it was banned really heavily in California. It was literally banned. The banning happens when school districts approve the book, and then people get up and start saying, we gotta stop it. That's what the banning is. So they went after my book in San Jose, in San Diego, in Santa Rosa, and I can name other communities, Fremont. They went after my book. And I had to come from Chicago all the way to California to struggle this out. And my attitude was, look, and they were saying parents don't want the book. And I go, you know what, I'm okay with that. If a parents don't want their kids to read my book, I'm fine with that. But don't lie to me. I bet you a lot of parents want this book. And a lot of the kids want this book. You're telling me a few parents don't want them, then don't let those parents read have their kids read the book. I'm okay. Parents should figure out what their kids want to read. My book is a hardcore book. I don't think it's for everybody. I'm the first one to say, don't give it to everybody, you know. But the reason why the book became popular is because it was a reality for all these kids. It was a reality for them in middle school. My book wasn't even written for young people. It was written as an adult book for adult kid people. And they use it in high school. Now they use it in middle school. Why? Because they've been seeing friends shot. They've been seeing friends die from drug overdoses or no family members, you know. They've been seeing the cops coming down and crash down in their pads. They were living this life that I was describing. So in that sense, give them the book. And then they say, well, okay, but we won't give them to like, people who don't have that life. But they need to know that world exists too. You know what I'm saying? They need to know the world. This is America. This is not some other country. This is happening in our neighborhood. This is happening in San Gabriel Valley. This stuff that I wrote about is happening here. They need to know so that they're not blinded to what kind of country we have. So I think that that's the problem with banning books is that they pull reality out of our classrooms. We need more reality in our classrooms.
Final question on this topic. So in the city of San Diego, they've recently sued to get some ethics-based stuff out and claimed that in La Quech was some type of incantation, a call to human sacrifice. This was actually in the legal documents. So can you speak a little bit to, as we do attempt to do this, how do we stop these racist trolls from stopping us?
So you all know what En La Quech is? Okay, some of you don't know. Okay, so it's from the Yucatan Mayan, and it represents the idea that you are the other me. It's En La Quech Halakan. I am the other you. It's just a beautiful greeting. It's a greeting you give to people. You are the other me, and the person would say, I am the other you. You know what I'm saying? It's just to recognize that we're all related. You know, it's a very important thing. You know, when you do Namaste, you know, when you do some of the Hindu or other kind of things, and that means the light in me sees the light in you. Among the Tarahumara, which is my mother's tribe in Chihuahua, Mexico, I found out because I went to the Copper Canyon, I went to the Barranca del Cobre, and I went to the Sierra Tarahumara, and I visited with them. I learned a few of the language, and they greet themselves with the words "Guirawa." That means we are one. People are constantly trying to remember. You know, when we say hello, it doesn't have the same meaning. You know, when they say Guirawa, it's a reminder we are one. And you know, it's like aloha, aloha, they say goodbye that way. Guirawa is to remind you we are one. You know, it's a beautiful concept. These are the concepts they want to get rid of in our classes. They say they're spiritual or religious. They're not really. Yes, they might have connotations from that, but they're really trying to say that we are all human beings and we belong together and we should recognize each other in each other. You know what I'm saying? And they're trying to get rid of that. And this is because people think we need to have one mono way of thinking and one mono way of living and one mono way of having history. You know what I'm saying? They're trying to homogenize us. And again, I have a saying that I got. This is a Christian saying. I'm not even. It's a Christian. It goes like this: in unity, in essential things we have unity, and in non-essential things we have liberty, and in all things we should have compassion. What does that mean? In the essential things, we should all be united, like having our kids taken care of, like having proper schools and health care. We should unite on making sure that everybody's needs are met. You know, we should unite on the essential things. On the non-essential things, which is you like tacos, you like pupusas, or you like mofongo. That's your business, you know. These are non-essential things. You can pick whatever you want. You know, whatever you like, hot dogs and hamburgers. I don't know. You know, whatever. That's up to you. You know, that's non-essential. So your liberty, you're free to pick the non-essential things. You know, you shouldn't have the same thing that I have. And then, of course, in all things, have compassion. To me, that's a very beautiful. Those are three beautiful things that we should have. And I would like to have a government based on those things.
So I know that you're a great writer. I know that you're a great organizer. You're great at a lot of things, Luis. You're one of the greatest things was visionary, and you're also great in inviting other people to be visionaries. And so at this point in time, I have no further questions. I just want to turn the mic over to you and give us your vision. I mean, it's really encapsulated your vision, and invite us all to have visions about what California can really be.
Well, and I know you all been here. I'm an old San Gabriel Valley guy, so yeah, I know exactly what things are like. I learned a long time how unjust the world is. Learned it very early. And I don't mind telling that story I did in Fresno because it's a pro. I went to school in Watts. We first moved to Watts we moved from Mexico. We were in Watts in a great community. It was always black and brown, by the way. Always, our gente were black, we were there. But I would go to school, and I went to 109th Street School. They had no place for the Spanish-speaking kids. They didn't know what to do with them. So for the first year, they would have me building blocks, just sat in the corner. And I didn't know how to tell them when I had to use the restroom, so I would pee my pants. It was awful. I didn't know what to do. I was a little kid. I was 6 years old. Nobody would help me, and I would pee my pants. Kids would make fun of me. You know, the teacher would make fun of you. I'm just telling you, it's the way it was. And I was really torn down. And then they wouldn't let you speak Spanish. Now, Spanish to me is a colonial language. You know, but I was speaking Spanish. That's all I knew. And I would speak it in the school there, and they would swat you or detain you. And one time, I would tell you, I went to pick up my sister who was in kindergarten. I went to her classroom. The teacher looked at me and, what do you want? I didn't even understand what she was saying. And I was talking to her in Spanish. She slapped me in front of the whole class. That slap has been hitting me ever since. You understand what I'm saying? That injustice has been hitting me ever since. And then I grew up in a world in which we were being pushed out. Our history wasn't told. The police were beating up. I lost two of them were my best friends, to unarmed, killed by police when I was a teenager. You know what I'm saying? This is the world I grew up in. I'm not saying we didn't do terrible things. As I told the guys in the prison, because I talked to all of them, and I go, yeah, the system was bad, but you guys, you played yourselves too. You know what I mean? I played myself. I fell into the traps. You know what I mean? I don't mind saying I messed up. I did a lot of harm. I moved away from it. We played ourselves in that world. But we also have to understand that consciousness is to understand the root of it is not us. The root of it is the system. And the system, like as the young people say, we need to have a reset. We need to imagine it again, reimagine it. We need to look at it the way it needs to be looked. And let's get that vision for what we want. Not just, again, managing all the crises, but to get right to the root of it and to say, let's uproot what has been unjust in our state and in our country and get right to the heart of true justice. That's what I'm about, and that's what I would like for you to help vote me in. Why? Only because we need to have that now. We're losing this country, we're losing this state. That insurrection, January 6th, is still going on, by the way. And if the Republicans get back like the way they're saying in the midterms, and after that, that insurrection is going to be for real. You guys, this is a dangerous time. And the only way to battle it is to prepare consciously and with heart and soul and your feet, prepare for the struggle. Not burn things down, not go out there and knock people around. You know, I get a lot of people want to do that. I'm saying let's build a foundation of a new house, not just burn down the old house. Let's build a foundation of a new house. I don't want to be walking around in ruins. I want to be walking around in a better house that's strong, that takes care of us, a house that makes sure we're all welcome and we all belong. And that's the house we all need to take.
All right, thank you, Luis. Thank you to Tráfico Libros. Luis can be here for a few more minutes, I guess, to connect them and connect to the campaign and find out how you do that. So thank you, Luis. Thank you, Tráfico Libros.